Through billowing smoke and twisted metal, veteran firefighter Jack Morrison crawls deeper into the wreckage. 23 years of service have taught him that every second counts. The car's mangled frame groans above him as flames lick at its edges. In the backseat, a young girl, no more than 8, reaches toward him with trembling hands. Her face, illuminated by the dance of emergency lights, shows a courage that strikes him as oddly familiar. As he pulls her to safety, she grips his hand with surprising strength. Through tears and smoke-strained breaths, she whispers a single word that stops his heart. "Daddy." Could this child be the daughter he was forced to give up all those years ago? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning ritual at Station 42 hadn't changed in 23 years. Jack Morrison stood before his locker, methodically checking each piece of his turnout gear. His weathered hands moved with practiced precision over the reinforced fabric, testing straps and closures that could mean the difference between life and death. The brass badge on his chest, number 4219, caught the fluorescent light, its surface worn smooth from countless calls. "Looking sharp as always, old-timer," Charlie Martinez called from across the locker room. The rookie, though at 32 rookie seemed a stretch, was still learning the rhythms of firehouse life. Jack merely nodded, continuing his inspection. Young blood like Martinez hadn't yet learned that every check, every routine carried the weight of lives in the balance. The station house itself was a testament to time's passage. Red brick walls had weathered 4 decades of Portland winters, and the concrete floor bore scuff marks from generations of boots running toward duty's call. Jack had spent more time here than in any home he'd ever owned. Captain Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. "Morrison, got a minute?" There was something in her tone that made Jack pause. In 15 years under her command, he'd learned to read the subtle variations in her voice. This wasn't a casual request. He found her in her office, a cramped space dominated by filing cabinets and a desk that had seen better days. She held a manila envelope, unopened. "Retirement papers came through," she said without preamble. "They want your decision by month's end." Jack settled into the chair across from her, feeling the weight of unspoken words between them. They both knew he was 5 years past when most would have hung up their helmet. "Still got some good years left," he offered. "Nobody's questioning that." Sarah leaned forward, her expression softening. "But you've given enough, Jack. More than enough." The words stirred something deep in his chest, a truth he'd been avoiding. Every save, every rescue had been an attempt to balance scales that could never truly be leveled. A penance for the one life he couldn't protect, the tiny heartbeat. He and Emma's mother had given away 23 years ago. "Departments changing," Sarah continued, her voice gentle but firm. "New protocols, new technology. Maybe it's time to—" "I'll think about it," Jack cut in, rising from the chair. They both knew he wouldn't. The job wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. Without it, he'd have to face the silence, the empty rooms of his apartment, the memories he'd kept at bay through endless shifts and training drills. Back in the engine bay, he found Martinez struggling with a section of hose. "You're rushing it," Jack said, moving to help. "Hose this size, you need to feel the weight. Let it guide you." His hands demonstrated the proper technique, movements honed by decades of practice. "Like this?" Martinez adjusted his grip, mimicking Jack's method. "Better." Jack watched the younger man work, remembering his own early days. "You know why we check every inch?" Martinez nodded quickly. "Because a weak spot could burst under pressure. That's the textbook answer." Jack ran his hand along the hose's length. "Real reason is everything we do here is a promise. To each other, to the people we serve. Every check, every inspection, we're promising to be ready when everything goes wrong. Because it will go wrong. Question is, will you be ready when it does?" The lesson was interrupted by the station alarm. Its harsh blare sent everyone into motion, a choreographed rush of purpose. Jack moved with the familiar surge of adrenaline, but something felt different. Later, he would remember this moment, the last normal morning before a routine call would shatter the careful walls he'd built around his heart. As Engine 42 rolled out into the grey Portland morning, Jack caught his reflection in the truck's polished side. The face that looked back at him was lined with years of service, of choices made and paths not taken. He'd saved hundreds of lives over his career, but as the engine's siren cut through the morning air, he couldn't shake the feeling that today's call would be different. Today, the past he'd tried so hard to outrun was about to catch up with him. In the quiet of the equipment room, Jack allowed himself a moment alone. The morning's training session had ended, leaving him with the familiar task of checking oxygen tanks, a job he often volunteered for, knowing how the solitude could settle his thoughts. His hands moved mechanically over the gauges while his mind drifted to the past, to a faded Polaroid he kept hidden behind his service medal. The photograph lived in his locker, tucked away where casual glances wouldn't find it. Sarah Thompson, not Captain Chen, but the other Sarah, the one who'd shared his youth, smiled up from the worn surface, her face forever frozen in that last summer before everything changed. She'd been 17, he'd been 18, and the world had seemed both infinite and impossibly small. He remembered the day the picture was taken, just weeks before they discovered the pregnancy. They'd been at her parents' lake house, planning futures that seemed as solid as wood and stone. Sarah had wanted to be a doctor. He'd just been accepted to the fire academy. They'd talked about marriage, about building a life together. All those dreams that feel unshakable until reality strips them bare. The positive pregnancy test changed everything. Her parents, pillars of the community, deacons at First Presbyterian, had been clear about their expectations. Adoption was the only option they would support. Sarah would finish high school, go to college, become the doctor she was meant to be. Their daughter would go to a good home, with mature parents who could provide the stability two teenagers couldn't offer. Jack had fought it at first. He'd offered to quit the academy, to find work in his uncle's construction business. But Sarah's father had laid out the harsh mathematics of their situation: minimum wage, no health insurance, no education. What kind of life could they give a child? "It's the loving choice," Sarah had whispered the day they signed the papers. "She'll have opportunities we can't give her." Her voice had been steady, but her hand had trembled as she gripped the pen. This adoption had been closed, standard procedure in those days. They knew their daughter had gone to a family in the Pacific Northwest, but nothing more. All they had was a birth date and the memory of 10 perfect fingers and toes. Jack pulled the Polaroid from his pocket now, studying Sarah's young face. He'd tracked her career over the years, through mutual friends and social media glimpses. She'd achieved her dream, becoming a pediatric surgeon in Boston, married with 2 kids, a beautiful home in the suburbs. She'd built the life her parents had wanted for her. He'd thrown himself into his own career with the same intensity, climbing the ranks at Station 42. Every child he pulled from danger became in some way a stand-in for the one he couldn't protect. Every parent he consoled carried echoes of his own loss. The station's radio crackled to life, startling him from his reverie. Engine 42, respond to vehicle accident with fire, Highway 217 northbound at Walker Road. Multiple vehicles involved. Jack tucked the photo away and moved toward the engine bay, muscle memory taking over. He'd learned long ago that the past was like smoke. The tighter you tried to grasp it, the quicker it slipped through your fingers. Better to let it settle, where it would, and focus on the present, on the next call, the next rescue. But as he pulled on his turnout gear, a fragment of memory surfaced. Sarah's last words before they parted. "Wherever she is, Jack, I hope she has your heart." He'd spent 23 years trying to prove worthy of that hope, trying to be the kind of man his daughter could be proud of, even if she would never know him. The engine's siren pierced the Morning air as they rolled out of the station. Jack settled into his seat, pushing away thoughts of the past. There would be time for memories later. Right now, someone needed help, and that was all that mattered. What he couldn't know, as Engine 42 accelerated toward Highway 217, was that the past wasn't finished with him. It was waiting just ahead, in the twisted metal of a car accident, in the frightened eyes of a little girl who carried his smile. The ancient coffee maker in Station 42's kitchen gurgled and sputtered, a sound as familiar as a heartbeat. Jack stood before it, waiting for the last drops to fall, while around him the station came to life with its usual morning choreography. The coffee maker had survived 3 chiefs, 2 renovations, and countless attempts to replace it with something more modern. Like Jack himself, it was a station fixture that refused to be retired. "Come on, Morrison, you're hogging all the liquid gold," Rodriguez called from the kitchen table where the B-shift crew had gathered for breakfast. The paramedic was new to B-shift, barely 2 years in, but she'd already mastered the station's particular rhythm. "Patience, kid," Jack replied, pulling the carafe free. "Good coffee takes time." He moved around the kitchen, filling cups with practiced efficiency. Each firefighter's mug told its own story. Martinez's USMC vessel, Chen's world's okayest captain gift from last Christmas, Rodriguez's chipped Portland Fire Academy graduation mug, Lieutenant Mike Thompson, no relation to Sarah, Jack had checked, looked up from his crossword puzzle. "Speaking of time, heard the brass is pushing for your retirement papers again." His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. Mike had been Jack's partner for 15 years, long enough to read the stubborn set of his jaw. "They can push all they want," Jack said, settling into his usual chair. "I've got work to do." "Yeah, like teaching Martinez how to properly coil." "A hose," Rodriguez teased, nudging the rookie with her elbow. "Saw you two out there yesterday. Real father-son moment." The word father landed like a stone in Jack's chest, but he kept his expression neutral. "Someone's got to keep standards up around here. Speaking of which, whose turn is it to clean the bathroom?" A chorus of groans and pointed fingers filled the kitchen. These moments, the easy banter, the shared responsibilities, the way they moved around each other with the familiarity of family, were what kept Jack coming back. The station had become the home he'd never quite managed to build for himself outside these walls. Captain Chen appeared in the doorway, her presence automatically straightening spines. "If you're all finished with breakfast theater, the training schedule needs reviewing. Morrison, you're leading the high-rise evacuation drill next week." "Copy that," Jack nodded, already mentally planning the exercise. He'd run similar drills hundreds of times, but each one mattered. In this job, routine meant survival. "And Jack," Chen added, her voice softening slightly, "make it a good one. Might be your last." The kitchen fell quiet, the weight of unspoken change settling over the room. Jack felt the eyes of his crew on him, saw the concern hidden behind their casual glances. They all knew the department's push for retirement wasn't just about age. It was about evolution, about making way for new blood, new techniques, new technology. Martinez broke the silence, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "You know, my old man retired from Engine 36 last year. Thought it would kill him being away from the job. Instead, he's coaching Little League, teaching fire safety at schools. Says he's never been happier." Jack stood, carrying his mug to the sink. "Your old man's not me, kid." He rinsed the cup with more force than necessary, trying to wash away the image of empty days stretching ahead. "Besides, who'd keep you rookies in line?" "We're not all rookies," Rodriguez protested, but her smile was kind. "Some of us just prefer to learn from the best." The station alarm chose that moment to sound, cutting through the conversation with its urgent wail. In an instant, the kitchen cleared, coffee cups abandoned, chairs pushed back. Jack moved with them, muscle memory taking over as he headed for his gear. As he climbed aboard Engine 42, Jack caught Chen's eye. She gave him a slight nod, their ritual before every call. In that gesture was 23 years of trust. of shared victories and losses, of lives saved and lives lost. It was the closest thing to family he'd allowed himself since that day at the adoption agency. The engine roared to life, and Jack settled into his seat, pushing away thoughts of retirement, of change, of paths not taken. Right now, there was only the call, the crew, and the job that had given his life meaning when everything else had slipped away. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that this ordinary morning was about to become anything but routine. The next call would shatter the careful walls he'd built around his heart, forcing him to confront the one thing he'd never been able to save, his own past. Engine 42 rounded the curve onto Highway 217, and Jack's world narrowed to the scene ahead. 3 vehicles were tangled like discarded toys, a semi-truck jackknifed across 2 lanes, a minivan crushed against the concrete barrier, and between them, a late-model sedan crumpled like aluminum foil. Flames had already begun to lick at the sedan's engine compartment. Morrison, Rodriguez, take the sedan. Martinez, Thompson, check the van. Captain Chen's commands crackled through their headsets as the engine ground to a halt. Truck 7 is 4 minutes out. Make it count. Jack was moving before she finished speaking, muscle memory guiding each step. The heat hit him first as he approached the sedan, then the acrid smell of burning oil and melting plastic. Rodriguez flanked him with the primary hose line, already calling out readings. Drivers unconscious but breathing. Passenger sides clear. Her voice was steady, professional. Backseat. She stopped and Jack saw why. A child's car seat. Time did something strange then, stretching like taffy, as Jack's mind catalogued details with brutal clarity. The car seat was purple with butterfly stickers. A small backpack lay on the floorboard, Emma embroidered in careful stitches, and there, strapped into the seat, a girl of about 8, dark hair falling across her face, eyes wide with terror. "Hey there, sweetheart." Jack kept his voice calm as he assessed the situation. The rear door was crushed, the frame warped. They'd need the spreaders. "I'm Jack, and that's Maya behind me. We're gonna get you out of here, okay?" The girl nodded, tears cutting clean tracks through the soot on her face. Something about her expression tugged at Jack's memory, but he pushed the thought aside. Focus on the rescue. Everything else could wait. Rodriguez, get ready with that backup line. Doors compromised. Might spark when we cut. He keyed his radio. Command, need the spreaders at the sedan, south side. Also need med response for unconscious driver and pediatric passenger. The next few minutes were a blur of coordinated movement. The spreaders arrived, their hydraulic whine mixing with the crackle of flames and the distant wail of sirens. Jack worked with mechanical precision, every motion calculated. The door groaned, then gave way with a screech of tortured metal. "Almost there, honey. Just hold on." The flames were getting bolder now, testing Rodriguez's defense. Jack could feel the heat intensifying through his turnout gear. "Maya, how's our time looking?" 2 minutes tops. Rodriguez adjusted her grip on the hose. "Fuel lines compromised." Jack nodded, already reaching for the girl. The car seat release stuck for a heart-stopping moment before yielding. As he lifted her free, her arms went around his neck with desperate strength. The gesture was so trusting, so immediate, that it made his throat tight. They were 20 feet from the car when the fuel line went. The whoosh of ignition pushed at their backs as Rodriguez covered their retreat, her hose creating a barrier between them and the flames. The girl's face was pressed against Jack's shoulder, her whole body trembling. It wasn't until they reached the safe zone that she lifted her head. The emergency lights painted everything in rotating red and blue, but Jack could see her features clearly now. The shape of her eyes, the set of her jaw, they were Sarah's, without question. But the way her chin squared up as she fought back tears, the slight crease between her brows. "You're safe now," he managed, his voice rougher than he'd like. "The paramedics are going to take good care of you and your daddy." The word stopped. His heart. For a moment, he was sure he'd misheard, that the roar of the fire or the blood pounding in his ears had played tricks with his senses. But then she said it again, her small hand touching his cheek with a certainty that shook the foundations of his world. "Daddy, Mommy showed me your picture, the one from when you were young, with her at the lake. The Polaroid. Sarah must have kept her own copy, must have shared it with their daughter. All these years, while he'd been carrying that worn photograph like a hidden wound, Sarah had been preparing for this moment. Emma?" His voice cracked on the name he'd only ever whispered in prayers. "Emma Thompson?" She nodded, and in that simple gesture, 23 years of carefully maintained distance crumbled. Jack was dimly aware of Rodriguez calling for the paramedics, of Chen approaching with concern on her face, of Martinez securing the scene around them. But all he could focus on was the miracle in his arms. The daughter he'd given up returned to him in the most impossible way. "Your mom," he started, then had to clear his throat. "Your mom, is she in Boston?" Emma supplied. "These are my other parents, the ones who—" She trailed off, but Jack understood. The ones who raised her, the ones who gave her the life. He and Sarah couldn't. The paramedics were there then, gentle but insistent. As they took Emma from his arms, Jack felt the temporary loss like a physical blow. But she kept her eyes on him, reaching back, even as they led her to the ambulance. "Don't go," she called, and the fear in her voice nearly brought him to his knees. "I'm right here," he promised, following close behind. "I'm not going anywhere." Captain Chen appeared at his side, her expression a mix of concern and understanding. "Jack!" "Sarah!" He cut her off, his voice raw. "Sarah Thompson's daughter." "My daughter." The words felt strange in his mouth, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. Chen nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. "Go with her. We'll handle things here." She squeezed his shoulder, a gesture that said more than words could. As the ambulance doors closed behind them, Jack caught a glimpse of his crew's faces. Rodriguez's open shock, Martinez's confusion, Thompson's dawning comprehension. They'd have questions later, dozens of them, but right now none of that mattered. What mattered was Emma's hand in his, her grip fierce and certain. What mattered was the way she looked at him, not with the terror of a rescue victim, but with the recognition of a child who had been searching for her father her whole life. What mattered was that somehow, against all odds, the smoke and chaos of a highway accident had led him back to the one person he'd never stopped loving, never stopped missing, never stopped hoping would someday find her way home. The fluorescent lights of Legacy Emmanuel's emergency department cast everything in a harsh, unforgiving glow. Jack sat in the waiting room, still in his turnout gear, the visitor's badge clipped to his chest, feeling like a brand. Hospital protocol said he should have left after the handoff. His job ended when the patient reached definitive care, but Emma's plea still echoed in his ears. "Don't go." The adoptive parents arrived in a flurry of anxiety and designer coats. Robert and Patricia Walsh, he'd learned their names from Emma's emergency contact card, looked exactly like the sort of people who could give a child everything. Robert's silver-streaked hair and Patricia's perfectly manicured hands spoke of stability, of private schools and summer camps, of all the things he and Sarah couldn't have provided at 18. Patricia spotted his uniform first. "You're the firefighter who—" She stopped, something in his expression making her pause. "Thank you for saving our daughter." Our daughter. The words landed like a physical blow. "Mrs. Walsh?" A nurse appeared with a clipboard. "Emma's asking. For both of you. Both." The word hung in the air between them. Patricia's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You're him," Robert said quietly. "The biological father." Jack stood, his full height becoming apparent. Years of service had kept him fit, solid. "Jack Morrison," he said, offering his hand. Robert took it after a moment's hesitation, his grip firm but guarded. "She has your eyes," Patricia whispered, and Jack heard the fear beneath her words. The same fear that had lived in his heart for 23 years, the fear of losing Emma all over again. I'm not here to, Jack began, but the arrival of Dr. Matthews cut him short. Emma's going to be fine, the doctor announced, reading. The tension in the air with practiced ease. Minor smoke inhalation, some bruising from the seatbelt. Her father... He glanced at his chart, then at the three adults, uncertainty flickering across his face. Her parents are here, Jack said, gesturing to the Walshes. The words felt like gravel in his throat. Of course. Dr. Matthews recovered, smoothly. Mr. and Mrs. Walsh, if you'll come with me, we can discuss Emma's treatment plan. Wait. Patricia turned to Jack. She keeps asking for you. Would you come too? The invitation cost her something. Jack could see it in the way her hand tightened on her husband's arm. But there was compassion there too, an understanding that transcended legal definitions of family. Emma's room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. She looked smaller in the hospital bed, dark hair stark against white sheets. Her face lit up when she saw Jack, and the smile was so purely Sarah's that it stole his breath. You stayed, she said, reaching for his hand. Promised I would, didn't I? He took her small fingers in his, careful of the pulse oximeter. Robert cleared his throat. Emma, honey, how are you feeling? I'm okay, Dad. She looked between them, her father by law and her father by blood, and something wise beyond her years settled in her expression. Can I talk to Jack for a minute? Alone? The Walshes exchanged glances. Patricia stepped forward, pressing a kiss to Emma's forehead. Just for a minute, sweetheart. We'll be right outside. When the door closed, Emma turned to Jack, with Sarah's determination in her eyes. Mum said you were brave. That's why you became a firefighter, she said, to help people. Your mom, Sarah, she told you about me? Emma nodded. When I turned 8. She said that's when I'd be old enough to understand. She sends me letters. Sometimes through Mom and Dad. There are pictures too. I have the one from the lake in my special box. Jack swallowed hard. All these years, while he'd been holding his memories close like dying embers, Sarah had been building bridges, preparing their daughter for this moment. She said, giving me up was the hardest thing you ever did, Emma continued. But you did. It because you loved me. Both of you did. We did, Jack managed. We do, every day. Emma's hand tightened in his. I'm glad you found me. Me too, kiddo. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Me too. A soft knock announced the Walshes. Return. It was time to step back, to return to his role as rescuer rather than father. But as he stood to leave, Emma's voice stopped him. You'll come back, right? Now that we found each other? Jack looked at Robert and Patricia, seeing in their faces the same battle he was fighting, between love and fear, between what was right and what was easy. If it's okay with your parents, he said carefully. Patricia stepped forward, her voice thick but steady. Of course it's okay. You're part of her story too. The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork and careful conversations. Jack sat in his apartment, staring at his phone where Emma's number now resided, courtesy of Patricia Walsh's surprisingly gentle insistence. She should be able to reach you, Patricia had said, her voice carrying the weight of years spent. Protecting Emma's heart, but we need to do this right. Doing it right meant lawyers. The Walsh's family attorney had already drawn up preliminary visitation agreements, each paragraph a reminder of how complicated love could become when filtered through legal frameworks. Jack's own lawyer, recommended by the Firefighters Union, had reviewed everything twice. The manila envelope from Sarah arrived on Wednesday, delivered by certified mail. Her handwriting hadn't changed in 23 years, still the same precise letters he remembered from notes passed in high school. Inside was a letter, along with medical records and photographs he'd never seen. Dear Jack, it began. If you're reading this, then what I've hoped for and feared for 8 years has finally happened. Emma found you. He had to stop reading for a moment, his hands shaking too much to hold the paper steady. The coffee in his mug had gone cold, but he couldn't bring himself to move from his kitchen table, where Emma's school picture, given to him by Patricia, now held pride of place. I started telling her about you when she turned 8. The Walshes agreed it was important for her to know her story, all of it. They're good people, Jack. They've given her everything we wanted for her, everything we couldn't give her then. But they understand that love isn't a finite resource. There's room in her heart for all of us. I've kept track of you over the years, through mutual friends and news articles. Every time I read about another rescue, another life you saved, I knew we made the right choice. You became exactly who you were meant to be, a protector, a guardian. Our daughter should know that part of herself comes from you. Emma has your determination, your sense of justice. Last year, she organized her entire 3rd grade class to raise money for the local animal shelter. When I heard about it, I cried. Because it was exactly what you would have done at her age. I'm in Boston now, as Emma must have told you. Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Mass General. I have 2 other children, Emma's half-siblings, though they've never met. Sometimes I see her in them, in the way they furrow their brows when they're thinking hard, in their instinct to help others. Nature leaves its marks, even across decades and miles. The Walshes have my number. When you're ready, when everyone's ready, we should talk. There's so much to say, so many years to bridge. But for now, focus on building your relationship with Emma. She's been waiting for you in her own way, just as you've been waiting for her. Take care of our girl, Jack. Not that she needs much taking care of. She's stronger than both of us ever were. Sarah. Jack read the letter 3 times before folding it carefully and placing it back in the envelope. On his coffee table, his phone lit up with a text message from Emma. Dad says I can call you tonight if you're not at work. Are you at work? The simple question carried such weight. He hadn't been at the station since the rescue, taking personal leave for the first time in years. Captain Chen had been understanding, handling the paperwork herself. His crew had maintained a respectful distance, though Rodriguez had left a casserole in his locker with a note. Because someone should make sure you're eating. Not at work, he typed back. I'd love to talk. 3 dots appeared immediately then. Can I ask you something? Important? Anything, he replied, his heart squeezing. Mom and Dad say you can come to my school play next week. It's Oklahoma. I'm playing Aunt Eller. Will you come? Jack stared at the message, remembering all the school plays he'd imagined over the years. All the moments he'd thought lost forever. His vision blurred as he typed, wouldn't miss it for the world. A moment later, a photo arrived. Emma in a cowboy hat, grinning at the camera. She had Sarah's smile, but those eyes, those were his mother's eyes, passed down through generations. Another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. He saved the photo, then noticed the time. His shift would have ended 10 minutes ago. By now, Martinez would be complaining about the coffee. Rodriguez would be organizing tomorrow's equipment check, and Thompson would be working on his eternal crossword puzzle. Life at Station 42 continued without him, as it had for 23 years without Emma. But now, finally, both worlds had a chance to merge. Not easily, not without complications, but with hope. Real, tangible hope, wrapped in school plays and text messages and careful steps towards something new. His phone buzzed again. Emma, can I call now? Jack smiled, his heart full. I'm right here, he typed. I'm always right here. Station 42 felt different when Jack returned to duty. The same brick walls, the same ancient coffee maker, the same familiar rhythms. But everything carried new weight now. He stood before his locker, running his fingers over the newly added photo of Emma in her cowboy hat, positioned right next to his service medals. She's got your scowl, Captain Chen said from behind him. Jack hadn't heard her approach, which was telling in itself. 23 years of hypervigilance, and now his mind was split between 2 worlds. Sarah's smile, though, he replied, not turning around. The real Sarah, I mean. Emma's. He stopped, still unsure how to navigate the terminology. Birth mother, first mother, The language of adoption felt inadequate for the complexity of their situation. "The retirement paperwork," Chen said after a moment. "I haven't filed it yet." Now Jack did turn, meeting her steady gaze. "Sarah, you've earned the right to choose your own timing, Jack. Besides," she gestured toward the photo, "seems like you might want to stick around Portland for a while." The morning briefing brought its own challenges. Jack felt his crew's eyes on him as he took his usual seat, noticed the careful way they gauged his mood. Rodriguez had cleaned his turnout gear while he was gone. He could smell the fresh detergent. Martinez had organized his equipment drawer, something Jack had been meaning to do for months. "All right, let's address the elephant in the room," Chen announced, her voice cutting through the tension. "Yes, Morrison found his daughter during a rescue. Yes, it's complicated. No, we're not going to treat him any differently." She fixed each crew member with a pointed look. Except Rodriguez, who's apparently appointed herself his personal chef. "The casserole was good though, right?" Rodriguez grinned, breaking the tension. "Better than Martinez's cooking," Jack managed, and just like that, the atmosphere shifted. Not back to normal. Nothing would ever be quite normal again, but to something workable. Thompson caught up with him after the briefing, falling into step as they headed for the engine bay. "My sister's adopted," he said without preamble. "Found her birth family when she was 30. Took them 2 years to figure out how to be in each other's lives, but they managed it." Jack absorbed this, recognizing the offering for what it was. "Emma's got her school play next week, Oklahoma." "Yeah?" Thompson smiled. "My kid's in that same production. She's playing Ado Annie. Didn't realize they were in the same grade." The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. All these years, his daughter and Thompson's had been in the same school, probably passed each other in the halls, maybe even shared classes. The world suddenly felt very small and very large at the same time. "You should come," Thompson continued, "to the play. Bring your crew. Show Emma that she's not just gaining a father, she's gaining a whole family of incredibly nosy, overprotective firefighters." Before Jack could respond, the station alarm sounded. They moved with practiced efficiency, but as Jack pulled on his gear, he found himself checking his phone, a new habit. A text from Emma glowed on the screen. "Good luck today. Mom and Dad say to be safe." The message warmed something in his chest. The Walshes had given Emma permission to text him during his shifts, with the understanding that he might not always be able to respond immediately. Another small kindness in what could have been a battlefield of competing claims. "Structure fire on Burnside," Chen's voice came through the radio as they pulled out. "3-story apartment building, possible entrapment on 2nd floor. Jack settled into his seat, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline, but now it was tempered by something else, a new awareness of what he had to lose, of what he had to live for. He thought of Emma in her cowboy hat, of Sarah's letter in his locker, of the Walsh's careful trust. "You good?" Rodriguez asked from beside him, her voice pitched low under the siren's wail. Jack nodded, surprised to find it was true. He was good. Better than he'd been in years. The weight he'd carried for so long hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something else, something that felt like possibility. "Hey, Morrison," Martinez called from the front. "After shift, we're all going to help Thompson build his kid's set piece for the play. You in?" Jack smiled, thinking of Emma on stage, of 2 decades of missed performances he couldn't get back. But here was a chance to be part of something new, not just for Emma, but for all of them. "Yeah," he said. "I'm in." Lincoln Middle School's auditorium hummed with pre-show energy. Jack sat in the 3rd row, uncomfortably aware of his dress uniform's stiff collar. Captain Chen had insisted he wear it. "It's your first school play as a father, Morrison. Dress for it." To his left, Rodriguez and Martinez occupied seats, still warm from their mad dash from the station after their shift. To his right, the Walshes sat with practiced poise, Patricia occasionally glancing his way with what might have been understanding. The program in his hands trembled slightly. Emma's name was there in black and white. Aunt Ella, Emma Walsh. Below that, in the special thanks section, for their help with set construction, Portland Fire Station 42. Thompson's daughter had insisted on adding it, proud of her father's. Crew's contribution to the weathered farmhouse that now dominated the stage. "She's been practicing her lines non-stop," Patricia whispered, leaning toward him. "Even in her sleep," Robert says. "Sarah was like that," Jack found himself saying, "before debate competitions. Used to drive her parents crazy." Instead of tension, the comment drew a small smile from Patricia. "Emma does that too. Practices everything until it's perfect. We never knew where she got it from." The house lights dimmed, and Jack's heart caught in his throat. He'd imagined this moment countless times over the years, sitting in an audience, watching his daughter perform. The reality was both exactly like and nothing like his dreams. Emma's entrance brought a collective intake of breath from their row. She owned the stage from the moment she appeared, her presence larger than her. 8 years should allow. The cowboy hat sat at a confident angle, and when she delivered her first line, "No use you two quarreling," her voice carried Sarah's determination and something uniquely her own. Jack wasn't aware he was crying until Rodriguez silently passed him a tissue. On stage, Emma was commanding the scene, every gesture deliberate, every line clear and strong. He glanced at the Walshes and saw the same pride he felt reflected in their faces. During intermission, Robert surprised him by offering to get them all coffee. "Emma will never forgive us if we fall asleep during Act 2, he said with a wry smile, "especially the part she helped choreograph." "She choreographed part of it?" Jack asked, and for the next 10 minutes, Patricia told him about Emma's insistence on adjusting the square dance sequence to better reflect historical accuracy based on research she'd done at the library. "That's all you," Patricia said softly. "That attention to detail, that need to get things right. Robert and I, we're more improvisational." Before Jack could respond, his phone vibrated. A text from Emma. "Are you still here? Mom and Dad too?" "Front row center," he typed back. "You're amazing, kiddo." 3 dots appeared, then, "Will you all come backstage after, together?" The request hung there, heavy with meaning. Jack showed the message to Patricia, who immediately touched Robert's arm as he returned with the coffees. A silent conversation passed between them. "Of course we will," Patricia typed on Jack's phone. "We're all so proud of you." The second act seemed to fly by. Emma's solo in Out of My Dreams left Jack gripping his armrests, overwhelmed by the pure, clear notes that could have come straight from Sarah's voice. When the final curtain fell, he found himself standing with the Walshes, applauding until his hands hurt. Backstage was organized chaos. Emma stood in the middle of it, still in costume, her face flushed with triumph. When she saw them, she did something unprecedented. She ran to Jack first, then immediately reached for Patricia's hand, pulling them both close. Robert stepped in, completing the circle. "Did you see?" Emma demanded. "Did you see when I fixed the blocking in the wedding scene? Mrs. Henderson said I was right about the historical positioning." "You were perfect," Jack and Robert said simultaneously. Then looked at each other in surprise. Emma beamed at them, then grew serious. "I have something to ask. All of you." She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders exactly the way Sarah used to before making a major decision. "Can Jack come to Sunday dinner sometimes, like Thompson's daughter does with her other family?" Aggie question landed in the space between them. Jack held his breath, watching the Walshes process the request. Emma stood her ground, chin lifted, cowboy hat slightly askew. Patricia spoke first. "I think," she said carefully, "that would be lovely, if Jack would like to." "Every other Sunday," Robert added, his tone measured but not unkind. "We can start there." Emma's smile could have lit the stage again. "And maybe sometime Sarah could come too. When she visits next month." Jack's heart stopped. "Sarah's coming." "For my piano recital," Emma nodded. "She always comes for the big performances. She said, maybe this time could be different, because we're all family now, right? Just a different kind of family?" The wisdom in her words, the hope in her face, it was almost too much. Jack looked at the Walshes and saw in their expressions the same recognition, that love, given room to grow, could expand to hold them all. Different kind of family, Patricia echoed, and reached for Jack's hand. The piano recital invitation sat on Jack's kitchen counter like a live wire. Cream-colored cardstock, Emma's name in elegant script, presenting Beethoven's Für Elise. Below that, in Emma's own careful handwriting, please come early. Sarah wants to talk to everyone first. 2 Sunday dinners with the Walshes had passed since the school play, each one easier than the last, though still carefully choreographed, everyone hyper-aware of boundaries, of roles, of the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. But Sarah's impending arrival changed everything. The past wasn't just memory anymore. It was flying into Portland International in 3 days. You're distracted, Rodriguez noted during equipment check. 3rd time you've counted those air tanks. Jack set down his clipboard. Through his office window, he could see Martinez teaching a fire safety class to visiting elementary school students. 8-year-olds, just like Emma. Everything in his world seemed to orbit around that fact now. Sarah's coming, he said finally. Emma's birth mother, what was she now? Ex-girlfriend seemed trivial, co-parent too presumptuous. Sarah, he finished simply. Rodriguez absorbed this. Want me to start a 4-alarm fire that day? Give you an excuse to miss it? The offer, absurd as it was, made him smile. Thanks. But Emma would never forgive me. Besides, he touched the photo in his wallet, the new one of Emma at the piano. We all knew this day was coming. The Walshes had suggested meeting at their home, neutral territory for what promised to be an emotionally charged reunion. Jack arrived early, his dress uniform replaced by carefully chosen civilian clothes. Patricia answered the door with understanding in her eyes. Emma's practicing, she said, leading him to the living room. She's played that piece 100 times. This week, Sarah always brings her a new piece to learn, and she wants to prove she mastered this one. The sound of piano music drifted down the hallway, precise and passionate. Emma had inherited more than Sarah's smile. She had her drive, her perfectionism. Jack recognized his own determination in the way she attacked the difficult passages, refusing to let them win. Robert appeared with coffee, handed Jack a mug without asking. These small gestures of familiarity had begun to feel natural. Sarah called from the airport, he said. Her taxi should be here soon. Emma's playing stopped abruptly. Footsteps thundered down the hallway, and she burst into the room, her dark hair flying. Is she... She saw Jack and launched herself at him, piano practice forgotten. You came early too. Wouldn't miss it, he said, catching her easily. These moments of physical affection had become precious to him, each one a tiny redemption for the years of empty arms. The doorbell rang. Emma froze. Jack felt her small body tense against his. Patricia moved toward the door, but Robert touched her arm. Emma, would you like to answer it? Emma slid from Jack's lap, smoothed her recital dress, and walked to the door with deliberate steps. Jack heard it open, heard a familiar voice catch on a sob. Oh, my sweet girl. And then Sarah was there, in the Walshes' living room, 23, years older, but somehow exactly the same. Her hair was shorter, streaked with elegant grey, and her clothes spoke of Boston sophistication, but her eyes, when they met Jack's, were unchanged. Jack, she whispered. He stood unsteady. Sarah. Emma looked between them, her face a study in complex emotions. Then, with wisdom beyond her years, she took Sarah's hand and led her to the couch. Sit by Jack, she instructed. Mom, Dad, you too. We should all be together for this. They arranged themselves carefully. Sarah and Jack on the couch, the Walshes in adjacent chairs, Emma perched on the piano bench where she could see everyone. The air felt thick with unspoken words. I brought you something, Sarah said finally, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a worn photo album. I thought maybe we could all look at it together. If that's okay. The album landed in the space between them. Emma immediately moved to open it, and there on the first page was the lake house photo, the original, not a copy. Sarah at 17, Jack at 18, their whole lives ahead of them. "Oh," Patricia said softly, leaning forward. "Emma has your smile, Sarah. We always wondered." "But Jack's eyes," Sarah completed, "and his strength." She looked at the Walshes, her gaze direct. "Thank you for giving her everything we couldn't, for loving her so well, for," she glanced at Jack, "for letting us find our way back to her." Robert cleared his throat. "She has room in her heart for all of us." "She does," Jack agreed, watching Emma study the photographs with intense concentration. "She's teaching us how to have room in ours, too." Sarah's hand found his on the couch cushion between them. Not romantically, but with the warm pressure of shared history, shared love, shared hope. On her other side, Patricia leaned in to see a photo Emma was pointing to, and Robert offered quiet commentary on the fashions of 2 decades past. Slowly, carefully, 5 people who loved one little girl began to write a new chapter in their shared story. The piano recital program had found a permanent home on Jack's refrigerator, next to Emma's school photo and the newly added family picture from after her performance. All 5 parents arranged around Emma at the piano, their smiles genuine, if slightly uncertain. The image captured something both precious and precarious, like a soap bubble catching the light. But it was the letter from Portland Public Schools that now commanded his attention, its official letterhead stark against his kitchen table. The words "gifted program selection" and "advanced placement opportunity" jumped out at him, along with "transfer to Wilson Academy" and "beginning next semester." His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Did you get the letter? We need to talk." Before he could respond, another message appeared, this one from Sarah. "Emma just called me about Wilson. Can we set up a video call, all of us?" Jack stared at the messages, feeling the weight of co-parenting in a way he hadn't anticipated. Wilson Academy was across town from Station 42, in a different response district. More importantly, it was 40 minutes from the Walsh's home, where Emma had built her entire life. The familiar tone of the station radio cut through his thoughts. "Engine 42, respond to structure fire, 1242 Cedar Street. Multiple calls received." He grabbed his gear, muscle memory taking over, but his mind stayed on the letter. As they rode to the scene, Martinez noticed his preoccupation. "Everything okay with Emma?" "She got selected for some advanced program," Jack said, checking his oxygen tank readings. "Different school, better opportunities, but it's complicated." Martinez finished. "Like that time my sister got into that fancy art school in California. Mom and Dad fought for weeks about whether to let her go. The engine turned onto Cedar Street, and Jack's training took precedence. The structure fire demanded their full attention, an old warehouse with potential hazmat concerns. It wasn't until hours later, stripped of his smoky turnout gear and checking his phone, that he found 15 missed messages. The Walshes had set up a video call for that evening. Sarah would join from Boston. Emma, according to Patricia's text, was very invested in everyone being part of this decision. Jack showered at the station, changed into clean clothes, and drove home in a daze. His laptop was set up on his kitchen, a table, when another text came through, this one from Emma directly. "Please say you'll join the call, Jack. I need all my parents for this one." The phrase, "all my parents," hit him like a physical force. 3 months ago, he'd been alone with his memories. Now he was part of a parenting quartet, no, quintet, counting Sarah's husband Michael, who'd been quietly supportive from Boston. At exactly 7, faces populated his screen, the Walshes in their living room, Sarah in what looked like her hospital office, and Emma front and center, clutching a folder of what appeared to be research materials. "I made a presentation," she announced without preamble, "about why Wilson Academy would be good for my education, but also why I'm worried about..." Leaving my friends and being far from home. And she glanced at Jack through the screen. Far from Station 42. Jack's heart clenched. Of course she'd thought of that. She'd inherited his habit of considering all angles, all consequences. Go ahead, sweetheart, Robert encouraged. We're all listening. Emma launched into her presentation with characteristic thoroughness. She'd mapped distance and travel times, researched Wilson's music program. They have 3 grand pianos, and Sarah says that's important for serious students, and even calculated how the change would affect her time with each parent. The complicated part, she said, her voice smaller now, is that I really want to go, but I don't want anything to change with how we're all finally together. The adults exchanged glances across their digital connections. Patricia spoke first, her voice gentle. Honey, nothing would change about our family. We'd just need to adjust schedules a bit. I could look into shifting to Station 36, Jack found himself saying. They're in Wilson's district. Chief Chen has been wanting to spread out the experienced officers anyway. Jack, no, Sarah interjected. Emma wouldn't want you to... She's right, Emma cut in. I don't want anyone to have to change their whole life. But maybe we could all help figure out how to make it work. Together. The word hung in the air between their screens. Jack looked at these people who had become, improbably, his family. Robert's thoughtful frown, Patricia's concerned eyes, Sarah's familiar, determined expression, all focused on doing what was best for Emma. Together, he agreed. We'll figure it out together. Emma's smile brightened every screen. I made a spreadsheet, she announced, holding up more papers. Color-coded for each parent's schedule. Sarah laughed softly. That's definitely Jack's influence. With Patricia's organizational skills, Robert added. And your attention to detail, Patricia told Sarah. They spent the next hour reviewing Emma's schedules and suggestions. 5 adults, and 1 very prepared child, working to build something new. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about their situation was, but it was theirs, and they were all committed to making it work. When the call ended, Jack sat at his kitchen table for a long time, looking at the family photo on his refrigerator. The soap bubble hadn't burst. It had grown stronger, reinforced by every challenge they faced together. The first month of Emma's new school routine resembled a military operation, with precision schedules and backup plans for backup plans. Jack had taken to keeping a copy of the color-coded calendar in his locker at Station 42, though he'd memorized. His days, Monday pickup from piano lessons, Wednesday afternoon homework supervision, alternate Sunday dinners. The Walshes handled mornings and most afternoons, while Sarah coordinated weekly video calls around her surgical schedule in Boston. It was working, barely, until the February ice storm hit Portland. Jack was halfway through his shift when the ET calls started coming in. First, Patricia. Schools are closing early. Robert's stuck in court, and I'm in Seattle until tomorrow. Then Sarah patched through to the station's landline. Emma's not answering her phone. The school's website says they're evacuating due to power loss. The storm had knocked out traffic lights across 3 districts. Engine 42 was already responding to downed power lines and accidents. Jack caught Chen's eye across the radio desk, saw the understanding in her face before he could ask. Go, she said. Martinez can cover your position. Just keep your radio on. We might need all hands if this gets worse. The drive to Wilson Academy should have taken 40 minutes. In the ice storm, with traffic snarled and roads treacherous, it took over an hour. Jack's hands were tight on the wheel of his personal truck, his mind cycling through worst-case scenarios, a habit born of 23 years of emergency response. He found Emma in the school library with a small group of stranded students. She was reading to the younger kids, her voice steady as she worked through Bridge to Terabithia, while the school administrator looked on gratefully. Jack. She spotted him through the library windows, relief breaking across her face. But she didn't run to him immediately. First, she finished the chapter, marked her place, and made sure the younger children were okay. The gesture was so precisely Patricia's style of calm responsibility that it made his throat tight. "The Walshes?" the administrator asked as Emma gathered her things. "Out of town on business," Jack explained. "I'm her father." There was a moment of confusion as the administrator checked her files. "I have Robert and Patricia Walsh listed as—" "He's my biological father," Emma spoke up, her voice clear and confident. "He's on my emergency contact list. Mom and Dad added him in January." The drive home was painfully slow. Emma filled the silence with commentary about her day. The excitement when snow started falling during math, the disappointment when they cancelled orchestra practice, the way her science teacher had turned the power outage into an impromptu lesson about electricity. "Where are we going?" she asked when Jack turned away from the route to the Walsh's house. "Station 42, he said. "Roads are too bad to make it across town, and the station has emergency power. Already cleared it with your mom and dad." Emma's eyes lit up. "The station? Really?" Jack smiled despite his tension. "Really? But there are rules, lots of them, and we might have to move fast if there's a call." The station house loomed through the swirling snow, its brick walls a welcome sight. Inside, the crew had already set up emergency protocols, with Rodriguez coordinating with city services about street closures. "Emma," Martinez grinned. "Perfect. Timing. We need someone to help organize the emergency supply inventory. You get your dad's attention to detail?" Emma straightened, recognizing the responsibility being offered. "Yes, sir. Where should I start?" For the next few hours, Emma became the station's unofficial assistant, helping to count supplies, relay messages, and even make coffee runs to the kitchen. Jack watched her move through the controlled chaos with surprising ease, adapting to the station's rhythms as if she'd been there all her life. When the call came about a multi-car pileup on the highway, Emma was ready before Jack could explain. "Go!" she said, already moving to the designated safe area they'd discussed. "I've got my homework, and Rodriguez promised to teach me gin rummy." Jack suited up with his crew, his heart fuller and heavier than usual. Through the garage bay windows, he could see Emma setting up her books at the kitchen table, her face serious as she pulled out her math homework. "She'll be fine," Chen assured him. "Whole station looking out for her. Besides," she smiled, "girls. Got good genes. Morrison determination, Walsh composure, and Thompson perfectionism," Rodriguez added, climbing aboard the engine. "She reorganized our supply closet by both size and function. That's definitely Sarah's influence." The engine pulled out into the storm, and Jack settled into his role, knowing Emma was safe, knowing she was where she belonged, surrounded by family, both blood and chosen. His radio crackled with updates about the accident ahead, but there was also a message from Patricia. "Robert's heading to the station. Should make it in an hour if roads allow. Emma says she's fine and learning gin rummy." Jack smiled behind his oxygen mask. They were figuring it out, all of them together, building something stronger than ice storms and emergencies, stronger than distance and divided loyalties, something that looked a lot like family. The storm's aftermath brought an unexpected gift, Emma's first overnight stay at Jack's apartment. The Walsh's neighborhood was still without power, and Robert's suggestion, "She seems comfortable at the station, and your place is right there," felt like more than just a practical solution. It felt like trust. Jack had spent 3 days preparing the spare room, painfully aware of its inadequacies. The furniture was mostly second-hand, but he'd found a purple bedspread that matched Emma's backpack, and Rodriguez had helped him pick out appropriate books for an 8-year-old's nightstand. Now, watching Emma unpack her overnight bag with methodical care, Sarah's influence showing in the way she smoothed each folded item, he wondered if he'd ever feel fully prepared for these moments. "Mom says you're supposed to show me your photo albums," Emma announced, placing her toothbrush in the bathroom with precision. "She says you have pictures from when you were my age." The request caught him off guard. Those albums were in his closet, untouched for years. Your mom remembered those? She says you always documented everything, like how I like to keep records of my piano progress. Emma sat cross-legged on the living room floor, expectant. Can we look? The albums were dusty but intact. Jack settled beside Emma, opening to pages he hadn't viewed in decades. His childhood unfolded in chronological order: school plays, sports teams, family vacations. Is that your mom? Emma asked, pointing to a photo of a woman with Jack's eyes and determined chin. My grandmother? The word hung in the air between them. Jack's mother had passed away 5 years ago, never knowing she had a granddaughter. Yeah, he managed. That's her. Emma traced the photo's edge. Did she know about me? She knew, Jack said carefully. She understood why we made the choice we did. She always hoped you were happy, that you had a good family. I do, Emma said, then looked up at him. I have lots of good family now. Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Don't forget to show her the science fair photos. She got that from you. He smiled, remembering Sarah's uncanny memory. The science fair pictures were near the back. Jack at 12, proudly displaying a project about fire prevention systems. Emma's eyes lit up. I'm doing fire safety for my science fair too. But I was worried about telling you because... She hesitated. Because I didn't want you to think I was just copying you. Hey, Jack turned to face her fully. You never have to worry about that. You're your own person. You just happen to care about some of the same things I do. Like how you and Sarah both love music, and you and Patricia both love organizing things, and you and Robert both love old Western movies. And we all love me, Emma added with a grin that was pure Sarah. The moment was interrupted by Jack's radio crackling to life. Engine 42, respond to assist Engine 36. Structure fire contained but hotspots reported. Emma was already moving, grabbing Jack's keys from the counter. Go, she said. I'll call Mom and Dad. Maybe they can pick me up at the station. Jack caught her arm gently. Hey, you know you can stay, right? Rodriguez is off duty, already offered to come over. We can finish the albums when I get back. Emma's face brightened. Really? But what about school tomorrow? Your mum, Patricia, already packed your uniform, remember? We'll make it work. He paused. If you want to stay, that is. I want to, she said firmly. Then, with careful consideration, can we make breakfast for Rodriguez too? Sarah taught me how to make French toast on our video call last week. Jack's heart squeezed. Here was his daughter, casually weaving together all the pieces of her expanded family, making room for everyone in her plans. French toast sounds perfect. He suited up quickly, listening to Emma chat with Rodriguez on the phone, making plans for their impromptu sleepover. Before heading out, he sent a group text to the Walshes and Sarah. Emma's staying over, Rodriguez supervising, everything good. The responses came quickly. Patricia, perfect. Her lunch is already packed in the blue container. Robert, tell her not to stay up too late reading. Sarah, ask Rodriguez to send pictures of French toast success. As Engine 42 rolled through the icy streets, Jack felt something settle in his chest. They were beyond the careful scheduling now, beyond the rigid boundaries of their initial arrangement. They were learning to flow with each moment, to trust each other's instincts, to put Emma's happiness above their own uncertainties. His radio crackled again. This time a message from Rodriguez. Emma's teaching me gin rummy. She says she learned from watching you play at the station. Better watch out, partner. Girl's got your poker face. Jack smiled behind his breathing mask. Emma wasn't just inheriting traits from her parents anymore. She was choosing which pieces to claim, which traditions to carry forward. And somehow, miraculously, they were all letting her lead the way. The transfer request form sat unsigned on Chief Chen's desk, while Jack stood at parade rest, a habit from his early days at the academy. Station 36 needed an experienced captain, and its district included Wilson Academy. The move made sense. On paper, shorter response time to Emma's school, better coordination with her schedule, a step up in rank. Everything logical pointed toward signing. So why did his hand hesitate over the pen? "You know you don't have to do this," Chen said, reading his reluctance. "Emma's thriving under the current arrangement. The Walshes mentioned it at the school. Fundraiser last week." Jack looked up sharply. "You talked to Patricia and Robert?" They brought coffee to the station's booth. Patricia helped Rodriguez organize the raffle tickets. Robert apparently knows more about vintage fire engines than half our crew, Chen smiled. "They're good people, Jack. They understand that Station 42 is part of your daughter's heritage now." Before Jack could respond, a commotion erupted in the engine bay. Through the office window, he caught sight of Emma bursting through the station, doors, still in her school uniform, clutching a paper to her chest. Rodriguez trailed behind her, obviously having picked her up from Wilson. "Jack! Captain Chen!" Emma skidded to a stop, her face flushed with excitement. "I got the lead in the spring musical." "Well, one of the leads. It's The Sound of Music, and I'm going to be Liesel." The transfer form lay forgotten as Emma launched into a detailed explanation of rehearsal schedules, costume requirements, and the historical significance of the Von Trapp family. Jack watched her gesture animatedly, noting how she'd picked up Rodriguez's habit of talking with her hands. "Sarah's already booking flights for opening night," Emma continued, "and Mom and Dad are helping with costumes, and I was thinking—" She paused, suddenly serious. "I was thinking maybe the station could help too, like with the school play." "The station?" Jack exchanged glances with Chen. "Well, there's this scene where the Nazis are searching the Abbey with flashlights, and I thought maybe you could help make it look more realistic, since you know about search patterns and emergency lighting and stuff." Emma's voice held Sarah's persuasive tone, the one that had won countless debate competitions. Chen leaned forward. "You know, Morrison, Station 36 wouldn't have this kind of institutional knowledge about theatrical lighting." Jack caught her meaning. Station 42 wasn't just his workplace anymore. It was becoming part of Emma's extended family, a piece of her story she was actively choosing to incorporate. "Actually," Rodriguez piped up from the doorway, "Martinez's sister works in theater. She might have some ideas about those lighting effects." Emma beamed. "See? It's perfect. Oh, and guess what else?" She pulled out her phone, thumbs flying over the screen. "Sarah wants to talk to everyone about the musical. She set up a group video call for tonight." The casual way Emma coordinated her various parents still amazed Jack. The weekly video calls had become a family tradition, with all 5 adults coordinating schedules across time zones to maintain their unusual but functioning dynamic. "What time's the call?" Chen asked, reaching for her calendar. 7, you should join too, Captain. Mom, Patricia, says you're practically family now anyway, since you help manage all our schedules. Jack watched his daughter charm his captain with the same ease she'd shown in bringing together her complicated family. Chen was all ready, noting the time in her calendar, a smile tugging at her lips. "Speaking of schedules," Emma continued, pulling out a color-coded planner that could only have come from Patricia, "I made a new one for rehearsals. See? Blue is for school days when Mom and Dad drive me. Green is for Jack's days. Yellow is for when Rodriguez helps, and purple is for special events when Sarah visits." Jack moved to examine the careful charts, remembering his own methodical planning as a child. But Emma had taken that trait and elevated it, using it not just for organization, but for bringing people together. "And look," she pointed to a notation. "In the margin, I asked Mrs. Henderson if we could schedule the dress rehearsal when Station 42's B shift is off duty, so everyone can come. She said yes, because Martinez helped her change a tire last month, and she owes the station a favor." Chen laughed outright. "You've got quite the strategic mind, Emma. Wonder where you got that from." "Oh, that's from all of them," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Sarah says you have to be strategic in surgery. Mom's strategic about her legal cases. Dad plans everything about his judge schedule. And Jack," she looked up at him with a grin, Jack's strategic about keeping people safe. Jack stared at the transfer form on Chen's desk, then at his daughter's carefully planned schedule. Station 42 wasn't just his assignment anymore. It was part of the intricate support system Emma had built around herself, a piece of the family she was creating. Without a word, Chen picked up the transfer form and fed it through her shredder. "I think," she said quietly, "some things are more important than logical career moves." Emma looked between them, sensing the weight of the moment. "Does this mean you're staying? Because I already color-coded next semester's calendar and changing." "It would mess up my whole system." Jack pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Yeah, kiddo, I'm staying. Some things you just don't transfer away from." The dress rehearsal for The Sound of Music fell on a crisp spring evening, with Sarah's flight landing just hours before. Jack found himself in Wilson Academy's parking lot, watching Sarah's taxi approach, while Patricia and Robert organized. Costume pieces in the trunk of their SUV. The scene struck him as surreal, all of Emma's parents gathered together, not for a crisis or obligation, but for a school musical. Sarah stepped out of the taxi looking travel-worn but elegant, her Boston sophistication softened by obvious excitement. "Did I miss anything? How's she doing?" The last text said she was nervous about the gazebo scene. "Breathing exercises helped," Patricia offered, passing Sarah a garment bag. "The ones you suggested on last week's call. The same ones you used before debate competitions," Jack added without thinking. Sarah's eyes met his, decades of shared history passing between them. "Mom." "Sarah!" Emma's voice cut through the moment. She burst out of the school's side door, still in her rehearsal clothes, her face glowing. "You have to come see what Martinez and his sister did with the lighting. It's perfect for the Nazi search scene." The adults followed Emma's whirlwind energy into the auditorium, where Martinez's sister Lisa was indeed working magic with the lighting board. The technical crew, composed partly of Station 42's B shift, had transformed the stage into a convincing Austrian Abbey. Thompson's daughter helped with the set design, Jack explained as they found seats. "Turns out she's got quite an eye for historical detail." "Takes after her father," Sarah smiled. "Remember when Thompson corrected our history teacher about firefighting techniques during the Great Chicago Fire?" "You remember Thompson from school?" Robert asked, surprised. "Oh, yes," Sarah's eyes twinkled. "He and Jack were notorious for their detailed presentations, used to drive the teachers crazy with their additional historical context." Patricia laughed. "That explains so much about Emma's last history project. 6 extra pages of contextual notes. With color-coded citations," Robert added fondly. Their comfortable conversation was interrupted by the drama teacher's call for places. Emma hurried past them toward the dressing room, then suddenly turned back. "Oh, I almost forgot." She pulled a creased envelope from her rehearsal bag. "I found this in the box of old photos Sarah sent. I think you should all read it, together, before the show." She pressed the envelope into Jack's hands and disappeared backstage. Jack recognized it immediately, the letter he'd written. To their unborn child 23 years ago, the one the adoption agency had said they could leave in the file. Sarah's breath caught. "I didn't know that was in there. I never read it." "Neither have I," Jack admitted. His hands shook slightly as he opened the envelope, the paper aged but intact. Robert and Patricia moved closer, forming an intimate circle in the empty auditorium. "Dear little one," Jack read softly, his voice rough with emotion. "Today, your mother and I made the hardest choice we'll ever make. We're giving you something we can't give you ourselves, a future full of possibilities. Somewhere out there is a family who can provide everything we want for you: stability, education, opportunities we can only dream of. But there are things we can give you, even now. Your mother's determination, her brilliant mind, her compassionate heart. My promise. To protect others, to make the world a little safer, to never stop trying to be someone you could be proud of." Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks. Patricia reached for her hand, while Robert's steady presence anchored their small circle. "We don't know if you'll ever read this," Jack continued, "but if you do, please know that every choice we made was out of love. Your mother is the strongest person I know. She taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. So we're letting go, but we're not giving up. We're giving you wings. Wherever you are, whoever you become, you carry pieces of us with you. Your mother's smile, my mother's eyes, our shared hope that you'll find happiness, love, and a family who cherishes you as much as we do. Be brave, little one. Be kind. Be yourself. All our love, Dad, Jack, and Mom, Sarah." The auditorium lights dimmed for final preparations, leaving them in a pocket of shadow and remembered pain. But it wasn't just pain anymore. It was something else, something that had transformed. Over 23 years into this moment, 4 adults brought together by one child's love, reading words written by their younger selves. "You got your wish," Patricia said softly. "She has all of that. The determination, the compassion, the drive to protect others. And she has us, all of us, helping her fly. And she is someone to be proud of," Robert added. "Every single day." Sarah squeezed Patricia's hand. "Thank you for giving her everything we couldn't, for giving her back to us in a way that made room for everyone's love." Jack carefully folded the letter, this artifact of hope and heartbreak that had somehow become a blueprint for their unlikely family. From backstage, they could hear Emma's voice warming up, strong and clear and unafraid. "Places in 5 minutes," the drama teacher called. They sat together in the darkening auditorium, no longer divided by the past, but united by its fruit. Their daughter preparing to soar. The auditorium filled slowly as families claimed their seats, unaware they were witnessing something remarkable. 5 parents arranged in a perfect row, Station 42's B-shift crew filing in behind them, all focused on one name in the program: Liesel. Yvonne Trapp, Emma Walsh Morrison. The hyphenated surname had been Emma's idea, added specially for the performance with the Walsh's blessing and Sarah's tearful approval. Jack felt the weight of his dress uniform's collar, worn at Emma's request. Beside him, Sarah fidgeted with her program, while Patricia adjusted the video camera Robert had meticulously set up. The house lights dimmed, and Jack found himself holding his breath. When Emma appeared on stage, the transformation was complete. Gone was the careful 8-year-old with her color-coded schedules and scientific approach to family dynamics. In her place stood a confident young performer, her presence filling the space as she moved through the choreography of 16 going on 17. "That's all, Sarah," Patricia whispered, dabbing at her eyes. "That stage presence, but the precision in her movements," Robert added softly. "That's Jack's attention to detail." Martinez's sister had outdone herself with the lighting design. Each cue highlighted Emma's performance perfectly, especially during the crucial Abbey scene. When the Nazi search began, the technical elements Jack's crew had helped develop created a tension that had the audience holding its breath. Emma's voice, clear and true, soared through something good, with a maturity that seemed to come from understanding beyond her years. During intermission, they gathered in the lobby, a strange but unified family group. Rodriguez distributed coffee from the station's ancient percolator, somehow transported to the school. Thompson's daughter hurried past in her stage crew blacks, giving Emma's parents a thumbs up before disappearing backstage. "She's doing great," Chen said, appearing with a bouquet of flowers. "The department pitched in. Hope it's okay we added our own touch." She showed them the card, signed by every shift at Station 42. Sarah examined the flowers with wet eyes. "Lilies were always her favorite? How did you know?" "She mentioned it during the storm," Rodriguez explained, "when we were organizing the supply closet. Said they reminded her of someone special, but she couldn't remember who. They were in the hospital room," Jack said quietly. "The day she was born. Your mother brought them, Sarah." The moment hung between them, Another piece of their shared history transformed from pain into connection. Patricia touched Sarah's arm gently while Robert squeezed Jack's shoulder. The second act began, and Emma's performance grew stronger. During Edelweiss, Jack noticed she was using the breathing technique Sarah had taught her, combined with the grounding stance Patricia had demonstrated from her courtroom experience. When she hit the high notes in the finale, her voice carried the same determination he'd heard in her "I need all my parents for this" declarations. But it was the curtain call that undid them all. Emma stepped forward for her bow, and instead of the practiced stage smile they'd seen all evening, she beamed directly at their row. A smile that somehow combined Sarah's radiance, Patricia's warmth, and Jack's rare but full joy. The audience rose for a standing ovation, but Emma's parents were already standing, their applause carrying 2 decades of love. Love given up, love sustained, love transformed, and love multiplied. Backstage was chaos of the best kind. Emma emerged from her dressing room to find her entire family waiting: parents, station crew, extended theater family. She moved through their congratulations with grace, accepting hugs and praise, but her eyes kept returning to the 5 adults who had redefined family for her sake. "I have something for you," she announced, producing 5 small boxes. "I saved my allowance, and Mom, Patricia, helped me pick them out." Inside each box was a silver compass pendant. "Because," Emma explained, her voice taking on the careful tone she used for important declarations, "you all helped me find my way, and," she swallowed hard, "and helped each other find the way to be a family. A different kind of family, but the best kind for me." Sarah clasped her pendant with trembling fingers. Patricia and Robert exchanged glances full of meaning. Jack stared at the compass in his palm, remembering how lost he'd felt for so many years. "Martinez helped me with the engraving," Emma continued. "Look on the back." They turned the compasses over to find a single word on each: Mother, Father, Mom, Dad, and Papa Jack, his station nickname now claimed by Emma. "So you never forget who you are," Emma said firmly. "To me and to each other." The stage had cleared, the other families gone home, but in that quiet backstage space something permanent was crystallizing. They were no longer bound just by legal documents and careful visitation schedules, but by the heart of a child who had found room for all their love. Chen's voice crackled over Martinez's radio. "Engine 42, non-emergency check." Standing by, Martinez responded softly, unwilling to break the moment. "Family matter in progress." "Copy that." Chen's smile was audible through the static. "Take all the time you need." The end of the school year brought another letter from Wilson Academy, this one heavier than the last. Jack recognized the weight of possibility in the thick envelope before Emma had even opened it during their weekly family video call. All 5 parents watched through their respective screens as she read the contents aloud, her voice growing more excited with each paragraph. Advanced placement, specialized music program, potential for early college credit. Emma's words tumbled out in a rush. "And they're offering a scholarship for the fall semester, but—" She paused, her face taking on the serious expression they'd all come to recognize as her family discussion look. "But it means a bigger commitment, more rehearsals, longer days, some weekend classes." Sarah leaned closer to her camera in Boston. "That sounds like an amazing opportunity, sweetheart." "It is," Emma agreed, "but it also means we'd have to change all our schedules again, and I know how hard everyone worked to make things balance this year." Patricia and Robert exchanged glances through their screen. "Honey, we can make any schedule work if this is what you want." "Actually," Emma said, pulling out her ever-present planner, "I already made some charts, but this time I think we need to do something different." Jack watched his daughter's face carefully. She had Sarah's look of determination, the one that had preceded every major decision in their shared history. "I think," Emma continued, "Sarah should move back to Portland." The silence that followed was electric. Sarah's hand flew to her compass pendant, a gesture they'd all adopted in moments of emotional significance. Mass General has been offering me a partnership with Portland General's pediatric unit, Sarah said slowly. They've been wanting to establish a West Coast presence for their research program. I hadn't mentioned it because I didn't want to disrupt what we've built. It wouldn't be disruption, Patricia spoke up, surprising everyone. It would be completion. Robert nodded. The guest house on our property. We've been talking about renovating it anyway. Wait, Jack found his voice. You've all been thinking about this? We have, Robert admitted. After seeing how Emma lit up during Sarah's last visit, Patricia and I realized that maybe it was time to consider a more permanent arrangement. But what about Michael? Emma asked, referring to Sarah's husband. And my half-siblings in Boston? Sarah smiled. Michael's been hoping for a change of pace. The kids are excited about having mountains and ocean nearby. And, she touched her screen where Emma's face glowed, they're eager to finally meet their sister properly. Station 42 is only 10 minutes from the guest house, Jack found himself saying. We could adjust the pickup schedule, make it work with the new school requirements. Emma's face brightened. I made a chart for that too, see? She held up a complex color-coded diagram. The blue sections are for when Sarah and her family live in the guest house. The green is for Jack's days because they line up with his shifts. At the station, the yellow is for Mom and Dad's regular schedule, and the purple, she grinned. The purple is for when we're all together. There's a lot of purple, Robert observed softly. That's the point, Emma said. I thought maybe we could have more family dinners, not just on scheduled days, but whenever we want. And Sarah could come to my piano recitals without flying across the country, and Jack could still pick me up from school on his station days, and Mom and Dad would be right there, and maybe, she took a deep breath, maybe we could finally be a normal family. Sweetheart, Patricia said gently, we'll never be a normal family. We'll always be extraordinary. Better than normal, Jack added, watching tears spring to Emma's eyes. We'll be exactly the family you need us to be. Sarah wiped her own eyes. I'll call Mass General tomorrow, start the partnership discussions. I'll contact the contractor. About the guest house, Robert offered. And I'll help Emma revise those schedule charts, Patricia added, with a warm smile. Actually, Emma said, her voice taking on the tone that meant she'd already thought everything through, I think we should stop using so many charts. Maybe we could just be together when we can be together, like a real family. Jack touched his compass pendant, seeing the others do the same through their screens. Their daughter, who had spent so much energy coordinating their careful dance of separate lives, was asking them to trust in something bigger than schedules and arrangements. Martinez says his family just shows up at each other's houses sometimes, Emma continued, just because they want to see each other. Could we try that? The adults exchanged glances across their digital connection, seeing in each other's faces the same recognition. Their careful construction of parallel lives had served its purpose. It had given Emma the security to ask for more, the wisdom to know what she needed, and the love to believe it was possible. Yes, they said, 5 voices becoming one. We can try that. 3 months later, Jack stood in the Walsh's backyard, watching the summer sunset paint the renovated guest house in shades of gold. The moving truck had left hours ago, leaving Sarah and her family settling into their new space. Through the kitchen window, he could see Emma teaching her half-siblings how to make French toast, a recipe she now claimed had been perfected through multiple family traditions. The compass pendant caught the fading light as he adjusted the collar of his civilian clothes. No emergencies today. Chen had insisted he take the day off. Some rescues, she'd said, are about being present, not being in uniform. Penny for your thoughts? Patricia appeared beside him, offering a cup of coffee from the station's ancient percolator. Somehow it had made its way to the main house's kitchen, a permanent loan that Rodriguez called cultural exchange. "Just thinking about that car accident," Jack said. "How sometimes the biggest rescues aren't about running into burning buildings. They're about running toward family," Robert added, joining them. He handed Jack a familiar piece of paper, the original adoption agreement, its legal language now softened by years of love and compromise. Sarah emerged from the guest house, her husband Michael and their children following. Emma's half-siblings, Jack noted, had inherited their sister's energy, if not her careful planning nature. They raced across the yard toward the tire swing Thompson's crew had installed last weekend. The French toast was a success, Sarah reported, accepting her own coffee cup. "Though Emma insists we need to document the recipe properly. Something about combining traditional techniques with modern innovations." "That's my girl," Jack and Robert said simultaneously, then laughed. These moments of shared pride had become common, comfortable. Emma appeared last, carrying a large scrapbook they all recognized. The family archive, she called it, had grown from a simple photo album into a comprehensive history of their unique journey. Jack caught glimpses of familiar images as she settled onto the patio. The old Polaroid from the lake, newspaper clippings of Station 42's rescues, programs from school plays and newer editions, Sarah's medical partnership announcement, photos of the guest house renovation, and countless candid shots of their expanding family circle. "I found something today," Emma said, opening to a blank page near the back. From her pocket, she produced a crumpled piece of paper, Jack's original. "Letter from the adoption file. I think it belongs here, but not by itself." She looked up at her assembled parents, her face carrying echoes of each of them. Sarah's determination, Patricia's compassion, Robert's steadiness, and Jack's protective instinct. "I think we should all write letters, not about the past, but about now, about who we are together." One by one, they settled around the patio table. Emma produced her seemingly endless supply of colored pens, organization habits died hard, and distributed them with careful consideration. Red for Sarah, blue for Jack, green for Patricia, brown for Robert, and purple for herself. "Dear family," Emma began writing, her voice clear in the evening air. "Today we're all together, not because of schedules or obligations, but because this is where we belong." Jack watched the others bend over their papers, each adding their voice to the story. Sarah wrote about coming home, about the courage it takes to complete a circle. Patricia and Robert described the way love multiplies when given room to grow. Michael added his perspective on joining this extraordinary family, while Emma's siblings drew pictures in the margins. When it was his turn, Jack stared at the blank paper for a long moment. Finally, he began. 23 years ago, I wrote about giving wings to someone I loved. What I didn't know was that those wings would carry us all to a new kind of family, one built not from obligation or tradition, but from choice and love, and the courage to try something different. The station radio on Jack's belt crackled. Softly, not an emergency, just the routine check-in he'd never quite learned to leave behind. Emma reached over and adjusted the volume, a gesture so natural it made his heart swell. She'd grown up with the rhythm of fire station life woven into her family's unique pattern. "There," Emma said as they finished writing. She carefully pasted the new letters alongside the original, the pages spanning 23 years of love, lost and found. "Now the story's complete." "Not complete," Sarah corrected gently. "Still growing. Like family should," Patricia added. Robert stood, surveying their gathering. "I believe this calls for more French toast." As Emma led the charge to the kitchen, her siblings in tow, Jack touched his compass pendant one last time. The metal was warm from the evening sun, like the love that had guided them all home. Through the window, he could see his daughter orchestrating her favorite breakfast for dinner, delegating tasks with the precision of a fire captain and the heart of a girl who had enough love for 3 sets of parents. The sunset painted everything in gentle gold, And in that light, Jack saw their story clearly. Not a broken family made whole, but a whole family that had needed time to find its shape. Different, extraordinary, and perfectly their own. Behind him, the radio hummed with the quiet voices of Station 42, while ahead, his family gathered in the warm light of the kitchen. Jack smiled and moved forward, stepping surely toward the love that had rescued them all.